G'day guys, Mike with the Outer Circle, and today's episode we're going to be looking at the Iron Hands in the Horus Heresy. Now, the Iron Hands suffer from being a less popular legion in someone's world. I think they're quite popular, from an earlier age of the Horus Heresy, and therefore they sort of are lacking in the models department. Not that their models themselves are lacking in quality, which we'll get into, but the amount of models they have is really lacking because, well, what you're seeing on screen, plus another couple of items down the bottom, that's it. That's everything. And when doors and shoulder pads make up nearly half your range, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. But we'll get into that as we go along. So, first up, the old Iron Hands Legion upgrade set. They're decent. They're nothing to write home about. They're just pretty simple. And I mean simple in a nice way. Except for this one helmet here, who almost, you can't tell that it's an Iron Hands helmet. It looks almost like a stock Mark III. But all the rest, with the interesting use of cables, I just like them. And I think they look really good as an upgrade helmet for other legions, things like rapier crews, for example, because it makes sense that like heavy weapons teams or rapier carriages, they would have these extra ocular implants. Works on tech marines as well. And I like the bare head on this squad because it works quite well. It's a very bionic augmented head, and well, if you're going to use a bare head, at least he's got something to protect half his face. Then we get to the Mark VI upgrades, and well, I'm not exactly sure what makes these Mark VI, but I really like them. I also really like the bare-headed sergeant who has like the Batu from Ghost in the Shell, sort of looking eye lenses. Yeah, those are pretty cool. Interesting, the whole hoses in the noses thing. That's an odd choice. But this is a set of these helmets which I actually want to buy in multiples. I have one set, and if I was doing more Iron Hands stuff, I would definitely buy more. I don't think they need the little skull on the helmet, just the fact that it's got this sort of segmented faceplate and a little bit of piping and hoses. I think that's perfect. Understated can really work well. I'm glad they didn't do what they did on many of the other helmets, which is just add gold trim above them, or in this case silver trim, onto the head and call it a day. No, this is actually something unique. And it looks like something they would have actually worn in the Horus Heresy. I especially like the crested helmet. I think for even up to the Praetor, that would be a good looking helmet. Wildcard entry in here, because again, this is a really, really underutilized range. This is the 40k Iron Hands Primaris upgrade set. Yeah, I know, 40k shocking, but all of the purity seals work well as Oaths of Moment. The bionic arms here, very well scaled for the larger Centurions and the Praetor miniatures, and also will work on Terminators. You can convert them, and they are a very good size for the old plastic like Tartarus and Cataphracti Terminators. Same with these arms here, with the bionic hand holding the call pattern bolt rifle. Chop the bolt rifle off, attach a combi bolter in its place. Excellent weapon right there. Also, you've got all these little trinkets which you can glue on wherever you like, and yep, there's a couple of obvious Primaris helmets in there, but remove these two helmets out of the way, and you're left with just these bare heads, which, well, they look fantastic. So there's a lot you can use out of this. Also, these shoulder pads with the large cogs going around the outside, something like a Indomitus unit might be able to make use of them, but I would suggest you could, if you're decent with the old hobby knife, slice the cog part off and glue it onto another shoulder pad somewhere. You can also cut these little trinkets on the chains off, and it gives you more trinkets to use, or you can just sell all the shoulder pads on eBay or something. But I think this is a set that you could get a lot of utility out of if you're willing to do the conversion work to make up for the lack of available options. Then we go into the Contemptors. Now, their Contemptor was quite a nice one. And a very unique one in that, well, you can't see it in these photos, but on the back, instead of having the regular sort of power plant with the exhaust vents, It has this sort of adamantic reactor that looks more like something Mechanicum. It's this rounded reactor, and it looks really cool. Of course, it's got the right head. It's got these nice bionic attachments that, even though the Dreadnought's head isn't the actual head of the Marine, it's cool to see them utilised, as well as the cabling and the segmented chest plate. It's understated relatively, and I think it looks quite good. Definitely in the upper half of the Contemptors. Then we have the Iron Hands Legion Mark III squad. Now, you could in the old days, because the scales, utilise these in a regular Mark III unit, and just to have a couple of guys that read more artificed armour. Me personally, I always just saw these as character fodder for both the Iron Hands and the Iron Warriors, because you have all these awesome Mark III bodies with clearly different handmade sets of armor plates, and of course the little cogs and such. That made them really good conversion material, and both legions have like a lot of chainmail and cabling and things like that. It worked really well. If you shave the Iron Hand symbol off, the Iron Hand hand on the shoulders, that was, a neat little shoulder pad with the cog, but the other arm with just the plain cog and the gear teeth around the outside of the trim, yeah, that works really well for, again, many different legions. Tech Marines, looks good on people who might be a bodyguard to a Tech Marine Lord, that kind of thing, or you can save them all for an Iron Hands command squad, for example. And even the Vexilia on the back, this sort of cog Vexilia with the servo skulls, yeah, that is proper grimdark, not grimdark. And yeah, fantastic. I mean, I hate to say it, there's not really an Iron Hands model I don't like. Then we get to the Medusan Immortals, and these guys have one minor issue, and that is that they are very monopose. You can swap arms, and that is it. The heads and bodies, with the exception of the Bear Sergeant's head, are sort of fixed in place. That head, that body is a one-piece casting. The legs, the chest, the works. So it's arms and shoulder pads are all you can really change on these guys. Now, these guys have a really, really cool shoulder pad as well, in that they've got the segmented right shoulder pad that's kind of like just like a Thunder Warriors one. You can see it in the back there. Yeah, they're pretty cool. This squad is cool, and again, awesome conversion fodder. Depends if you want to keep the shields or not as well, but there's nothing wrong with having shields on characters in 30k, and shields are a great place to have all this extra Legion iconography and to add some more interesting visuals to your army. Use of decals, hazard stripes, that sort of thing. Shields are a great option for that. So, just like with the previous unit, the Tacticals, consider using these guys as conversion fodder for your characters. Or run them as Medusan Immortals, because they're pretty good on the tabletop and really good in the Rite of War. I also like that the set actually includes the Graviton gun, because Graviton guns in the Iron Hands range, they are really the only legion that makes heavy use of them, because they're the ones in the rules who get to. Most other legions struggle to get access to the things. Iron Hands, upgrading Graviton guns to Graviton shredders become absolutely terrifying. They're one of the few legions that can really deal with Contemptor Dreadnoughts and large automata, because they can just throw so much haywire out. Iron Hands Moritat in particular, with twin Graviton pistols, that's a Dreadnought killer. Then we get to the Gorgon Terminators. Again, I really like them, but look, performance-wise on the tabletop, they're middling this edition. They were much better last edition. They need to be able to swap a little bit more easily to Power Fists. And yeah, they don't have enough access to Thunder Hammers, which are of course king in this edition. But what's interesting about the Gorgons is they're basically proto-Indomitus pattern, which means if you don't want to use Gorgons as Gorgons, you can run them as Indomitus Terminators. And yeah, they make fantastic Indomitus Terminators. So consider that as an option. I do love the shoulder pads on them. That, again, segmented look to them, just like on the Medusan Immortals. Really, really hot. The helmets, they're sort of like a shortened version of the Indomitus Terminator helmet, Looks really brutal, aggressive. I like it a lot. The bits of pipe work and such around the bodies, yep, it all works. And I've painted... I'm going to say I've painted and finished 10 of them. I think I've done more than over the years, but I definitely did 10 for one of my armies. And they were nice kits to put together. They assembled pretty easily. They were fun to paint. They weren't overly detailed. They had enough room left to breathe. Yeah, I quite like them. And don't forget that you can get things like Graviton Shredders on this squad as well. So yay for that, because it's a much more effective weapon than, say, a heavy flamer, which you'll see on other Terminator units. Gorgons also make a good upgrade option for characters, because you can pretty much call any character suit of armor an artificer set of Terminator armor. So, a quick arm and shoulder swap, and ta-da, your character is whatever armor you so desire, and it nicely suits the Legion. Speaking of characters, we go into the Ironfather, and I do like the model. There is one thing that has always irked me, and that is that this head is sculpted in. That's it, you're stuck with the bare head, and because it's a dark armor scheme, most people are going to, spray base coat it, and there's a lot of airbrushing to get Iron Hands to look like Forge World's Iron Hands with this sort of metallic green, purple, brown scheme. I do talk about how to do that scheme on my Instagram, and I did have it confirmed by a person who painted them that I was correct in how to do the scheme. It is basically using Tamiya colours, Tamiya clear reds, orange, blue, yellow, that kind of thing, over the top of metallic base coat, and then using Tamiya's smoke, and maybe with a little bit of black mixed into the smoke. Smoke is like a clear, dark colour, and you just darken it up until you get just the right consistency to it. You don't want to have very, very super shiny models. And apart from that, yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, so the head is kind of the detracting factor here. I have cut just the servo harness itself off, because the way it attaches to the back of the body, you can quite easily remove it, the little mount, and then you can stick it onto another Terminator's body quite easily. So consider that an option for you if you want to go down this road. Also, the way this one is designed, yes, it is very, very easy to swap the arms on, which is, of course, a huge deal to me. I bring it up often because it is important to see. Anyway, then we're going to throw another wild card in here, because, again, I want to try and get the most out of this range and provide a few options for your conversions along the way. And the Legion Praetor with Power Axe. Oh, Macca, what are you thinking showing this? Well, what I'm thinking is we get rid of about half of this model. We cut off the arms, we get rid of the backpack, we get rid of the head. So we're keeping just the chest and the chainmail. And then we take this model from the 40k range, and we put these arms, that head, and this backpack. Yeah, okay, it's a Primaris backpack. Who really cares? It's an Artificer backpack, okay? If you're super keen, cut the offending pieces off this backpack, like the nacelles, and attach them to the other backpack's nacelles instead. You can make this very, very easily into a fantastic Ironfather. Yeah, it's Primaris scale, which means it's big, but hey, guess what? In the new Horus Heresy, the characters are like orcs. They sculpted these guys big because they're the boss, and the boss is the biggest git. Therefore, the Primaris parts perfectly fit onto this model because he is bigger than a Terminator. So, yeah, but that means you can have basically this model, who really, the only parts that don't work for 30k, yeah, okay, technically the shoulders aren't 30k. The legs, though, the legs are not 30k. But you can take this model, hell, you can take everything but the legs and attach your own legs to it. And this thing will look fine in 30k. Yeah, it's got these little round bits in like the elbow region. Who cares? Again, this is a character. This is the master crafted armor. The guy leading the army. This is the Ironfather. So use this as conversion fodder, and you end up in a very similar pose to what this basic model is, but you're doing something more interesting with it. Okay? And you might have things like say, if we go all the way back to the start of this video, you might take something like this crested helmet from the Mark 6 upgrades and plonk that onto this body. And what you're going to end up with, along with the chainmail, because this is why I picked this miniature in particular, the Volkite weapon, the chainmail, it feels very much more Iron Hands than many of the other options do. So that would be my advice to you. Now, let's round out this video with the Primarch. Ferrus Manus. One of the dumbest Primarchs in 30k, beloved by those who play the Iron Hands, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not the biggest Ferrus Manus fan, rules-wise. For some reason, the 360 view isn't working at the moment, so go websites. But this is one lovely Primarch. It's one of the best. Yeah, this is... I think he was the third Primarch released. I think it went Angron, Fulgrim, Ferrus. And Fulgrim and Ferrus, when they originally released, you could buy this limited edition diorama scenic base, which allowed you to combine Ferrus Manus and Fulgrim together, so they were actually fighting out the duel, which ends in Ferrus's death. Doesn't make sense, though, because Ferrus didn't have the hammer in that duel, and, well, anyway. Close enough, right? But this is a really, really nice model. The armor is meant to be Terminator armor. Now, it kind of looks more like power armor with Terminator shoulder pads, I think we can all agree. And that's because it doesn't have the big back sort of section, the hood, over the top of Ferrus Manus' head. I guess I had to remove that because otherwise, how did Fulgrim even get the sword in there to cut his head off, I guess? Maybe that was the thinking behind it. So it doesn't really strike me as looking particularly like Cataphractii Terminator armor. It really just looks more like a special custom suit of power armor to me, but hey, who cares, right? Again, we're arguing like semantics here. But Ferrus Manus just has this lovely detailing of like the numerals and the little cogs and rivets on the armor and all the folded up servo harness on the back with the different weapons. It looks really, really good. And yeah, they knocked it out of the park with this model. Ferrus is one of those models who we didn't have a lot of visuals to go on. Some Primarchs we did. You know, we knew what they looked like quite well. I think Horus is a great example of that. Or Guilliman's not a bad example. We had seen quite a few pictures of Guilliman. We knew what Mortarion looked like, and Magnus especially. Everyone knew Magnus for his titty horns. The one thing they really lacked on in 30k. But Ferrus was one of the ones who we only had a couple of really distant blurry images or old like visions of heresy stuff where he looked completely weird, tripped out of this universe because it was drawn by a drug-addled Blanche or something. That's fine, but obviously translating that into the more realistic, quote-unquote, pseudo-historical version of the Horus Heresy, they had to do something with it, and this is what they ended up with. And what they ended up with is a Primarch that's probably in my top 5. Yeah, it's without a doubt in my top 5. Yeah, my very favourite Primarch may surprise you guys when we get to it. But yeah, Ferrus Manus, beautiful sculpt, absolutely gorgeous. And if only they were all at this level of quality, it's just wow. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm back with the Outer Circle. I hope you enjoyed this episode on the Iron Hands. Again, I apologise for the fact that it's probably a little bit saltier than we'd like because, well, these episodes are meant to be a bit of fun. You know, looking back at the range as it is now and saying, you know, what works and what doesn't here. And this is a range that everything basically works. And when you're saying something isn't perfect, it's literally just that. So, oh, well, it's not perfect, but it's still a 9 out of 10. You know, that's the Iron Hands in a nutshell. Very much like the Emperor's Children. The Emperor's Children, all their older stuff is like this. It's fantastic, you know? And we're going to see that again with a few other legions, where it's like, we look at it and we're just like, this is awesome, 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 awesome. And this is one of those. And it just really sucks that they have just not been given the attention that they really need. A proper Praetor, not just the Iron Father Cataphractii, which is nice, but it's really more of a stand-in for their special character, Ortek Maw. That's how he's armed anyway. And what they need to do was something, they need proper Terminator HQ, especially one in Gorgon armor would be nice, or maybe one in Tartarus armor, something different, okay? And of course one in power armor. But until then, I've given you some conversion advice that I think you should take on board, as I did for the Space Wolves and I did for the Iron Warriors before this. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Thoughts and comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.